السلام عليكم مستمعينا الكرام، واهلا بكم في بودكاست استثمر، البودكاست الذي يغطي القطاع المالي في المنطقة العربية بشكل أشمل، ونغطي قطاعات تشمل عملية التخارج الإكزيتس وعملية الاستحواذ والاندماج M&As، وكذلك التقنية المالية الفينتكس والاستثمار في العالم العربي. ضيفنا اليوم هو جرمين بحري، وفي هذه الحلقة نغطي خبرته التي تضم خبرة واسعة في السوق الأوروبي في مجال الصيرفة، ورؤيته تطور النظام البنكي في السوق الأفريقي والسوق العربي، وكذلك خبرته في المجال ورؤيته لشركته الناشئة واسمها زازو، والتي توفر خدمات مصرفية غير مسبوقة في الأسواق الأفريقية والعربية منها، والتي تتبع نهج ميركوري في السوق الأمريكي وكونتو في السوق الأوروبي في تقديم خدمات بنكية وتكون فولي ديجيتال. Hello Germaine, how are you? How's everything?
Good, Ahmed. Very good. Kul shay sahi, as we say here in Morocco. How about you?
All great, all great. Well, thank you for coming over to the show. Mr. Germaine, so I know you are the founder of Zazu, a digital bank focusing on Africa and the Middle East. Can you briefly tell me a bit about it and what problem are you guys solving?
Yeah, no. So in short, we are building, as you said, a digital bank, particularly focused on SMEs, right? So entrepreneurs, founders, freelancers, but also scaling businesses. We started in South Africa as the first pilot market. Now we're extending into a second market, Morocco, with the idea to extend in the coming years into the rest of MENA, right? So North Africa and let's see how far we'll go into the GCC. But in terms of pain point, it's very simple. We think that business banking, especially for the modern entrepreneurs and businesses, has been quite outdated. Right, we've seen monopolies by the banks, the traditional banks. We felt that in many markets there's been some types of innovation, mostly on the B2C, right, with neobanks and new digital types of tools for, but always mostly focused on the consumers, and that segment has been quite forgotten. So. We would like to bring basically a more modern experience with tools that actually help them manage, their end-to-end finances, including accounting, bookkeeping, spend management, and much more, so that they can actually focus on their business and not spend, many hours or days at the end of the month to try to figure out what they pay, how do they reconcile their payments. So that's Zazu.
Yeah, amazing, Germaine. So, from your experience, I see you have been into European unicorns and now coming to MENA and Africa. From your past experience, so, okay, as I said, you have 2 EU fintechs before. What did those journeys teach you? What experience did you gain out of this?
Yeah, no, indeed, I had a chance to work at Fidor Bank first, which was one of the very first digital bank, even pre-Revolut, pre-Mercury, pre-Monzo. So that was one of the very first digital bank, and eventually they pivoted into one of the first banking as a service platform. So I kind of saw both sides of it, and eventually I joined straight afterwards Solaris Bank, which is today also one of the European unicorn, enabling, I would say, 60 to 70% of all the fintech models that you see in Europe, right, from buy now pay later to SME banking. What did they teach me? Many things. I think. Well, the first thing was the transition from my finance background into fintech, right? I think now you're starting to see more and more programs at universities around fintech. But back in the days, I'm talking 2017, 2018, right? You had the first waves of fintech, but you were not taught in school what an e-wallet is, what's behind instant payments, what's the core banking system, right? So really understanding the basics of what makes the difference, from a technical perspective, an architectural and product perspective, from a fintech to a traditional bank. Two, I would say the whole philosophy around putting the customer first, right? What was great about Fidor is that that was one of the first banks that actually had a community. So now I think it's becoming also a bit more quite common. I think now Monzo has a community and so on. But back then, Fidor Bank was one of the first ones to say, look, even before getting their banking license, they created a community where they put, customers at the center of it. They would ask questions around how to co-construct the bank of their dream, right? And eventually they built the bank out of that. So really that whole philosophy around customer first, right? And the importance of things like UX, UI, not in terms of just visually, but also in terms of efficiency, right? So what you've seen is Fidor back in the days, they did quite some revolutionary initiatives around crypto, around instant payments and gamification. But at the end of the day, it was just simpler feature that actually worked, right, compared to the traditional banks. And I would say lastly, at Solaris, well, you know, a German bank with German regulations, I think is what I took is that although we want to move fast, also, you know, fintech is great and very innovative. There's a big elements of regulations, whether you want to you know, whether you want to take it into account or not. At the end of the day, regulation will come for you. So so that's something that today at Zazu we try to keep in mind, is that even though we are operating in newly regulated environments, there are certain things that that are more flexible than others. We know that at some point the regulator will come for us. So yeah, voilà, that's some of the things I've learned.
Okay, wonderful. And why with MENA and Africa right now? What made you decide to pivot to this market?
I think it was really in terms of well, it was two things. One, it was the size of the opportunity, right? If you look at Africa plus MENA combined in terms of number of businesses, you're probably over 60 to 70 millions of businesses altogether. That's almost more than the US and Europe combined. And what we liked also is that we felt that we find a lot of the very similar dynamics that we knew from Europe back then, meaning that there's been, you know, traditional banks, they had monopolies for the past decades, right? In parallel, you've seen this whole new generation of both actually on the B2C side of you know, people entering the market with, you know, much higher expectation when it comes to tech, but also new types of entrepreneurs and businesses, right? I don't have the numbers on top of my head, but in terms of rate of company creation and entrepreneurship, these are some of the highest actually in Africa and even in the MENA region. And as you probably know, Ahmed, right? It's we're not talking, especially in MENA, right? We're not talking anymore about the typical entrepreneur that goes out of necessity, you know, following their parents' business, but you know, next generation of entrepreneurs like you that are building the next SaaS, the next e-commerce, and so on. And the gap is just too big between what they want to build, what they know, and what the current traditional banks offer, right? So that was one part of it. And the second piece is around impact, right? As opposed to when we left Europe, there was a crowd of new digital banks and digital tools, which was great. But at the end of the day, it became much more of a UX UI race, if you will, and it was more about efficiency than actual impact, right? And what we find in those regions, right, MENA in Africa, is that you're actually solving real problems. You actually enabling an entrepreneurs to move away from doing a manual reconciliation or actually zero accounting or reconciliation at all, to actually giving them the digital tools to really fast track that, right? So so that's what we liked about the continents, the regions. So both a mix of the opportunity and the momentum that we see.
Okay, wonderful. You have mentioned a few things about the backend infrastructure in MENA and Africa is not meeting the expectation, meeting the advances, let's say, in the rest of the economy. As you mentioned, the e-commerce part, the growth in media, the growth in tech, but the banking is not keeping up with that. What's the main problem with it exactly?
Where to start? I think the main problem historically is that you know, one of them is that they've had monopolies. They sit on monopolies for the past decades, and as I said, so the good things about monopolies is that you have no competition coming in, you have no threats, right? So you become accustomed to just what you offer. So there was no real innovation, you know, in the markets to accelerate and push them to offer better products. That's one. Two, I think historically, if you look at the banks, right, they've always been sort of try to be good at everything, right? All the way from retail banking to business banking to lending to mortgages, right? But eventually they all became average across the all of these streams, right? I mean, granted that some banks are doing better in other ones, but what was left is specific segments and niches, right? Like freelancers, like entrepreneurs, like e-commerce, that eventually were always offered a retrofit or some types of a retrofit of a corporate account, right? Something that was made for Vodacom, for, I don't know, MTN, but never for the small guys, because essentially they were not profitable, especially based on the legacy system that these banks were offering, right? So what that meant, what that still means, is that it translated into you know, these businesses being underserved, meaning that they don't actually have the right tools to run their finances. Two, it's a very old and clunky experience, right? It's in terms of UX UI, it's terrible. Most of the time, it just doesn't work. And lastly, you're offered, very quite high and untransparent fees, right? Among many things. So that's exactly where we're trying to come in, right? Is they bring in a modern experience and bringing tools that actually helps these small guys, right? Like as I said, accounting, bookkeeping, spend management, things that typically they don't have. They either don't have at the banks, or they need to add 5, 6, 7 tools on top of their banking experience to manage that. And lastly, into an experience and a pricing structure that is, just like you may expect from your Spotify or your, I don't know, Stripe. It's a subscriptions. You understand what you're paying, and it seems quite fair for the value that you get.
Okay. So you're mainly solving legacy issues.
I guess that's the idea of becoming a better alternative to legacy banks. Yeah, that's one of them. The second one is indeed sort of a having, as I said, 6 to 7 different logins, right, and different tools that typically coexist but don't talk to each other, right? Which at the end of the day, right, if you look at one of the number one problem for a lot of these businesses is number one is access to finance or credit, right? And it's not that they can't access credit. It's just that a lot of the data architecture and the credit systems have not been made for them, or are still inadequate, right? So the idea of at least bringing that together, right? Enabling them to really understand their business into a modern experience, which in turn can turn this data, to make them eligible to access these finances.
Okay, wonderful. Now we skip to Zazu's product and their market expansion. Okay, first, what does Zazu offer today exactly, and who is the core customer? Who do you target exactly, and who will benefit the most from your offer?
Yeah, so what you get today is a full digital onboarding. And believe it or not, that is that's in some market it's almost a USP, right? So no need to go to a branch, no need to send documents, right? So you can open an account from the comfort of your home. Then you get an actual account, a business account, right, from which you can make payments and receive payments. You can add a card or multiple cards for yourself and your team members. To these cards, you can add multiple limits, right? Block them, and set specific budgets. You have the ability to create also multiple accounts, right? So like you want to create an account for your commercial team, for your ops teams, for your taxes, and so on. What else? We have the ability to get paid. Actually, we are enabling also payment links, right? So we're not going full deep down in those payment machines and gateways, but today freelancers can actually create invoices actually and attach a payment links to it. And lastly, we have a dedicated marketplace where we have a range of tools all the way from CRM, project management, HR, and so on that we recommend and that we have semi integrated for now, right? Meaning that as soon as you select one of these products, you share the credentials with these partners, with the idea in the mid to long term to really integrate these partners into experience. That's it.
Wonderful. Quick question. So, what do I need to qualify as a customer if I were to join into your product? How can I qualify?
Yeah, so you just need to be incorporated into as a business into the markets that you operate, right? So in South Africa, you need to have a certificate of incorporation, and vice versa in Morocco as well. So that's it. That's pretty much it. Or statute of auto-entrepreneur. Back to your question, sorry, around who we're targeting. So typically, as I said, right, the broad segment is SMEs, right? Obviously, that name means a lot of things, but typically, I would say, is the entrepreneurs, right? So first-time entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs mostly, solo founders, right? Then we have sort of in that same bucket, but with very different needs, the freelancers, right? So or the one-man band, let's put it this way. So we have freelancers, we have independent consultants, lawyers, right? That may have a side activity that they manage on their own as a business. And the last one is, as I said, the scaling businesses, right? So it could be businesses from 10 to 20 to all the way to 50 employees. I don't think we have any businesses that has more today, but that start having a bit more complex. I wouldn't say complex, but different sets of needs around. For example, access. That's something we offer as well. Different rights and roles, right, and permissions for their CFO, for their accountants, for the finance team. So voilà, that's a bit the spectrum to which we're targeting.
Wonderful. And why did you choose Morocco as the first market in MENA?
Why we chose Morocco? Well, but we always liked Morocco from a market perspective. We knew that there was something was going on there. We knew that there was a momentum. We weren't just yet sure around the regulation. We felt like the market was very nascent. So that's why we started in South Africa. But eventually, one of our partners that we knew, she's called Shari Money, who Ismail Berhian is one of our early investors as well, just got their first payment license, right, to act as a banking as a service. So that was kind of sort of the green light for us to say, look, if we step into that market, which we think now is experienced some momentum, looks to be ready because we have a whole also new generation of entrepreneurs. We also have a big agenda from all the government entities to really push for digitalization by 2030. We think the momentum is right. We know that we have a partner there that can back us up in terms of license, in terms of infrastructure. So voilà, these are typically things that we look at, right, when we choose the market: is how ready the market is, how do they look like in terms of regulation, and do we have a partner that can enable us to enter fast? That was the case for Morocco. And what we like about Morocco is that entry to the whole to the rest of MENA, right? Tunisia is up there as well, where I'm from. Egypt as well, different markets, but I'll say cousins somehow.
What about Libya, where I'm from?
Libya is an interesting one. I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I don't know what the what the current state of affairs is now in Libya.
I mean, it's still quite far away from, let's say, Morocco or Egypt, but there's a big push into e-banking by the central bank. So let's see in the coming 10 years if it develops as it should be. But there's a big push right now towards e-banking.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Well, I mean, maybe if you find us a partner that can enable us there in terms of infrastructure and license, let's go.
Absolutely. Yeah, why not? Wonderful. And in your opinion, Germaine, what's the hardest thing in the MENA market when it comes to access to your business? Is it the regulations? Is it the infrastructure or distribution or something else?
Yeah, I think it's, I would say that these are markets that they are opening up, right? And that's what we like, but we're, I guess, historically a bit, I mean, just like Europe was and so on in the past, I would say past 20 years as well. I think they felt a bit closed initially. Now they're opening up. So in terms of everything, right? In terms of new players coming in terms of foreigners setting up businesses. So I think, yeah, the first one was really the idea of stepping into a market where we were pretty much new. We didn't have a network there and so on. Where it's still very much most of the businesses, as you know, the banks and so on, payment infrastructures are owned by local people. So I would say one coming in as foreigners in these markets, especially as Europeans, considering the history, right? It's I mean, same in South Africa. I mean, just as the disclaimer, right? It was never. We like to think that we have the right experience, but we never came in as the markets with the attitude of like, look, we know better. Let us show you how we do it, right? It's definitely not like that. We're looking at it as an opportunity to really build and for the local markets. But that is definitely a hurdle, especially considering the historical ties with Europe that we may come in like this, right? I would say, and lastly, it's in terms of trust. Especially around digital services, right? For a lot of these markets, it's COVID has accelerated that for sure, but it's still pretty new for, and I see it in the account opening for young entrepreneurs to put their CIN or their identity card online, to open an account online, and especially with the new player, right? Where as much as we can communicate on how regulated we are and so on, there's still. And then that was the case, to be honest, to be fair, in Europe as well, in France as well, back then when the first Revolut came in and so on, right? It's like we hate our banks, they hate it, but at the end of the day, we kind of trust them. But not the trust, and that's where we come in. It's not the trust that they have my best interest at heart, but rather the trust that they will be there tomorrow if something happens, right? So there's a whole part around, the trust aspect of it. Yeah, I would say these are some of the challenges that we are learning to overcome.
Wonderful. Um, Okay, now moving to fundraising and banking. I see that you have received some prestigious banking from esteemed institutions, including Plug and Play, Visa, Conto, Bricks. Question is, how did your previous experience and track record help in this fundraising? And how were you able to persuade investors with the product of Zazu?
Yeah. I mean, just to clarify as well, when we say Conto, Brex, and so on, these were individuals, I guess, business angels, right, that came from these brands. But we also had indeed Plug and Play was in there with a few other funds. No, look, I guess our experience was sort of how do you call it, a stamp of right, so that made the conversation. I guess the biggest part of fundraising usually is trust, right? So that gave us the trust, that gave us the network. Actually, more, the easiest part. Well, the easiest, the yeah, the easiest route that we took was really to raise from our network to start with, right? So as I said, people that we had worked with, either at Conto, either at indirectly people that we know at Brex, right? So these guys had worked with us, they trust our work ethic, they understood the business that we were doing, so it was the easiest probably narrative, right? That was one part of it. The second part of it is also people, typically people at Brex and so on, people that are in the business that don't always know us personally, but have seen the impact and the opportunity for such models. So they understood it. They understood that it's the same play that they've done, but in a different market. And essentially, raising from institution was a bit different. Yes, once again, our background and the brands we worked for gave us probably the edge and the trust. But at the end of the biggest hurdle still was for us was to convince them that at the end of the day, we're still building into markets where we had never operated before, right? So what has helped is that we were able to bring actually some of our network and people we had worked with to actually build quite quickly, right? Instead of finding resources that we didn't know and making maybe the wrong choices earlier on when it comes to infrastructure, which enabled us to quite quickly have an MVP and come back to the table and say, hey, look, yes, we're new into this market, but at least, we have something at hand. There's minimal traction, and now they were able to really trust us seriously and actually come in. But so it was a mix. Yes, it gave us the credibility. Yes, it gave us the conversation, but still that didn't. There was still 20% of it to bring across the line into these new markets.
Well, I guess it's as the saying goes, your network is your net worth. So I think you pretty much agree with me onto this.
For sure, no, for sure. I spoke to a few entrepreneurs recently, and I told them, look, anyone is an investor, meaning that people you work with, people I've met. As I said, yeah, 80% of the angel rounds were people that I worked with across the past 10 years. My boss, the person that was sitting next to me, and so on. You never know. So network is number one. Yeah.
Great. So now we move into the vision of Zazu and Zazu long-term ambitions. As for you, Germaine, where do you want Zazu to be in 5-10 years?
Yeah, as a startup, obviously we have big plans and ambitions, but we're always thinking of what's the next 5 days looking like, what the next 5 years. But if I had to think next 5 to 10 years, look, I'd love to become the SME banking of choice across the continent and the region, the MENA region, right? So something like Conto has been able to do in Europe, like Mercury has been able to do in the US. As like if you think startup banking, if you think business banking, by default it's obviously you don't wake up thinking BNP Paribas, right? So becoming that reference in the region for any new entrepreneurs and businesses that wants to run their finances online. Probably yes, if we can reach a few millions of customers across these two regions, that'd be great. Possibly our own license, let's see, somewhere in some of these countries. And I think being able to bring, I would say, I guess a top tier one VC, right? I'm saying from the US, but typically what we have in mind, but someone that really can bring us to the next level and compete at the level of a Revolut or a Mercury, right? Because we know that these guys are overlooking at the region. These guys are coming, and we need the right partner to play that battlefield. So voilà, that's what I can wish for us in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. But you mentioned that a big VC from the US. You don't think there is a big enough VC backing from, let's say, GCC or MENA in general that can match what kind of backing you can get from the US?
No, I think you do. I think for sure. I think I'm less so familiar with the GCC investors yet, because we started in South Africa, so we were more in the. I think you're starting to have, but typically, what we've seen behind a lot of unicorns today. At some point, you have an Axel, you have a Sequoia that really understands the model, that really can put a few millions on the table to say, look, get running, and that can really take ambition to the next level. So probably GCC, yes. Europe, yes and no. I guess you have big funds, but me being European, I'm not sure we always have the same level of ambition. So that's why, by definition, I'm taking US. But no, I think so as well, GCC. I think you're starting now to see actually some very good players and funds emerging. So
Great. Okay, Germaine, we are approaching the end. Where can people or potential new customers find Zazu? How can they sign up? How they can qualify?
They can always reach out to me on LinkedIn if they have any questions or want to chat. I'm trying to respond to anyone really. I'm always accessible, and they can find Zazu at gets-zazu.com. It should be /FR for the Moroccan one, and /SC for South African one for now, until we expand in further region.
Wonderful. Any last words?
No, thanks, Sam. It's a pleasure. I think, as I said, I've
Same here.
Watched a few of your podcasts. Keep it up, and I think it's at the image of the new generation of entrepreneurs that are coming in, right? So, no, very, very much a pleasure.
شكرا لاستماعكم متابعينا الكرام، وأتمنى أن تكونوا استفدتم من هذه الحلقة. لا تنسوا الاشتراك في القناة، وكذلك تقييم الحلقة والمشاركة. وكذلك أدعوكم متابعة سيد جرمين بحري ومتابعتي على لينكدين. تجدون جميع الروابط داخل الوصف بما يشمل مستر بحري's own startup getzazu.com. شكرا لكم جميعا.